Oh, welcome to Brother from Another on a Thursday. I'm feeling good. Doc Johnson is in the building. What's up, Doc? How you doing, man?
I'm alive. I'm here. I'm ready to eat a tremendous amount of crow with barbecue sauce about these finals. I'm ready to go. Michael.
Okay.
I'm prepared. I am prepared for all that is coming my way.
All right. Crow with barbecue sauce, a side of baked beans. We got some potato salad. We got some coleslaw. There is a party later. We'll talk about the party. This is all party food. We'll talk about that at the end of the show. But before you start eating crow, I want you to acknowledge the same way I'll acknowledge that, hey, you aren't for everybody, neither am I, right? Look, can we say that? Are we grown up enough to say we're not for everybody? Some people will like us. Some people will say,
look, some people just don't have good taste. So yes, I'm not for everybody.
or some people don't have good taste. And I think that's what Monty Williams is saying today as he reflects on the last few weeks. Now remember, the Phoenix Suns were bounced from the playoffs. They were blown out of the playoffs by the Denver Nuggets. And we started talking, hey, 2 years in a row, the Suns are not prepared. What's going to happen here? They got blown out by Dallas at the crib last year, Game 7. On the road this year, they lose to the Denver Nuggets. And now, Monty Williams was fired. There were reports that the new owner, the little kid, little rookie governor of the Phoenix Suns, didn't like Monty Williams. And look at this, Doc Johnson. Monty Williams is the new head coach of the Detroit Pistons with a record contract. The Detroit Pistons said, word? Oh, you don't want him? Not only do we want him, we're going to make a historic statement to secure his services. The contract could be up to $100 million. Could be worth $100 million over 6 years. There's never been an NBA coaching contract like this. And Doc Johnson, I want you to tell me why did the Detroit Pistons do this? I got a couple ideas, but I want to hear what you got to say.
First off, I don't want to hear the statements from Monty Williams. I want him to do the meme with like stacks of $100 bills saying, I can't hear you, Phoenix. I can't hear you, Phoenix, because I got all this money. That's all I want him to do. I am generally in favor of labor and employees getting paid, right? I'm never going to be on the side of ownership when it comes to these things. And I love the idea of a black man being overpaid, because this is overpaying. I'm happy that Monty Williams got hired, right? But they overpaid him given the last 4 years. I have to put that out there up front. Is he an excellent coach? Yes. Does he do well with culture? Yes. Does he have sort of a good game plan for how to advance with talent? Clearly, right? You integrate Kevin Durant. He's done a very, very good job. He had them up 2-0 in the finals. Monty Williams couldn't overcome his coaching, and most people's couldn't overcome a dysfunctional roster. But I wouldn't have broke the bank for the guy, but I'm happy to see anybody get paid.
Well, listen, this is where you're wrong. He's not overpaid. Okay, I'm going to tell you, like, you said you're in favor of labor, and maybe the reason you're in favor of labor is the reason I'm in favor of labor, especially when you're talking about corporate business. I'm not talking about small businesses down the street just trying to get by. They got 1 or 2 employees, and every month you got to look around and say, can we make it another few months? I'm not talking about small businesses. I'm talking about corporations that are part of a multi-billion-dollar industry, which is what the NBA is. So the Detroit Pistons, he's not overpaid because they got it. Like, we're talking about the top coaches getting paid $13 million. Who's to say the number is 13? Maybe the number should be 20. Maybe the number should be 22. So, no, he ain't overpaid because they got it. That's one. 2, you're the Detroit Pistons. You haven't had a winning record, Doc Johnson, in 7 years. They haven't been over 500 in 7 years. They haven't won a championship in 19 years. And certain things are out of their control. Like I like Cade Cunningham, #1 overall pick a couple years ago. I like him. Only played 12 games last year. I like him. But I don't know what's going to happen with Cade Cunningham. I don't know what's going to happen with Jaden Ivey, who they took 5th last year. I don't know what's going to happen, who's going to slide to them at the #5 pick in this year's draft. They got screwed. I thought they'd get Victor. They're not going to get him. I don't know. I can't control that.
Right.
But the Pistons are saying what we can control is the money we spend on our infrastructure and on our leaders.
Right.
We've got a leader who has won a ton of games, who has been to the NBA Finals, who's got credibility, who's played in the league. Baby, bring him on. It ain't even about him. We ain't doing it for him. We're doing it for our fans. We need our fans to understand we're credible and we're going to go out there. We're going to do everything that we can control. Some things we can't control. This one we can.
Coaching in the NBA is important. It ain't nearly as important as the NFL. It may not even be as important as being a manager in Major League Baseball, because at the end of the day, in the NBA, I don't care how good or bad a coach you are, talent usually, wins the day, right? We don't know how good a coach Steve Kerr is because Steve Kerr had 3 Hall of Famers. We don't know how good a coach Phil Jackson is. We know what his racial attitudes are. We don't know how good a coach Phil Jackson is because he had nothing but Hall of Famers. So I get it. You can spend this amount of money on Monty Williams. I think he is a competent coach. But if you're spending that kind of money to me, I would want to get somebody who's already got a ring. That would be my attitude. Now, the East is wide open. The East is open like the grand.
Where are you going to get those guys? Tell me a guy with the ring who's available and who's going to Detroit. Like Mike Budenholzer? You want Mike Budenholzer over Monty Williams? I don't. Nothing against Budenholzer. I think Monty Williams is a great fit for this young team, this young roster. But tell me that list of coaches who are just sitting there saying, hey, I got a ring. Doc? Maybe Doc Rivers got one. So Doc has one. He's available. Budenholzer's got one. He's available. But who are all these guys?
Michael, now I'm hurting. You could outcoach Doc Rivers. Okay, there's a speak and spell AI out there right now that can outcoach Doc Rivers. Man. Okay,
you just
Boston's coach.
What time is it?
Doc
Gary,
Rivers.
Natalie,
let's not insult coaching by mentioning Doc Rivers.
What time is
the
it?
Lenny Wilkins of the new millennium.
3:10. Okay, here it is. You're 10 minutes late. Now, last time you were on, you went in like 37 seconds, and by the 10-minute mark, you already had like 14 pelts on the wall. Now got your first one. Go ahead. Keep going. Proceed, please.
We had to build it. We had to build it. Look, to me, again, you gonna break the bank, you gotta break the bank on a sure thing. You want to break the bank? You got to break the bank on somebody who's proven they can do it. Literally, in my brain, the idea of paying a record amount of money to Monty Williams when the guy who beat him in the finals is still unemployed doesn't make much sense to me. Like, that's the part that doesn't make much sense. Now, again, is he a good coach? Yes, he is a good coach. And again, also, what's Detroit really looking for? They ain't bringing the bad boys back, right? They ain't bringing Isaiah back. They ain't bringing back Tayshaun Prince and Rasheed Wallace. I don't know what they think is going to happen with this team, but we know the East is wide open. We know that the Boston Celtics don't have anything that they can do to stop anybody. They're a freight train that you can run through. We know that the Miami Heat are playing above and beyond their pay grade. They might be a beatable team. So again, in 2 years, we may look back on this Monty Williams contract and say, yo, the Detroit Pistons made the second round of the playoffs. They made the Eastern Conference Finals. Then the money would be worth it. I don't know if I'd have spent this much money, but I definitely would have made the hire.
Yes, you would. Yes, you would. Stop counting other people's money. Stop counting money. Stop counting money, okay? Listen, don't feel sorry for the Detroit Pistons and what they're paying. I don't think the checks are going to bounce. Okay, they're good. Everything's good.
Oh, no.
And everybody.
Oh, no.
They're going to be all right.
If I have unlimited funds, I'm still not buying a $10,000 t-shirt. Okay, like it's not, trust me, this isn't about defending the Detroit Pistons. They have enough things to worry about in that city. They got plenty of mediocre teams. They got issues downtown. Right. They can't fill their casinos, right? But that's not the issue. The issue is what you're getting for the money. There aren't a lot of coaches that I would spend that much money on, quite frankly, right? Because like I said, I do think that's having a ring should actually matter. Budenholzer is the first one that comes to mind.
I think that's what we're getting at. And, and the more I look at it, And we don't disagree as much as it sounds like we do. When you say coaching, talent wins the day, I do agree that talent wins the day. I'd say talent wins more than strategy sometimes, but what is important?
Oh, completely.
What may be more important than strategy in NBA coaching is credibility and leadership. So, what are the Pistons buying? They're buying credibility. They're buying leadership. They're buying buy-in. Those players, you're going to buy into Monty Williams. You just are. And it has happened at every step of his career. It happened when he was a player. It happened in New Orleans as a coach, got them to the playoffs. Happened in Phoenix, took over a disastrous situation. They brought in Chris Paul, and then they win 60-plus games twice. And it's going to happen here with the Pistons. So I think the only slight disagreement we have is that I do know what Steve Kerr can do. Like Steve Kerr is I'm not saying he's the best coach of all time, but if you give everybody the Warriors and Steph Curry and Klay Thompson and Draymond in their prime and Kevin Durant, everybody is not going to win what he won. Everybody's like, they might win a championship or two. There's no guarantee they'll win 4. Hey,
that's true.
Phil Jackson won 6. And Phil Jackson was not Michael Jordan's first coach. He won 6.
No.
Del Harris coached Shaq and Kobe before Phil Jackson did. And so I'm going to give credit to those guys who, not for their strategy, but just their way. Pat Riley, same thing. They got a knack for saying the right thing and stepping back at the right time and letting their leaders come forward. I think the Pistons are hopeful that Monty, at the very least, can help them reset a culture, and they haven't had one in a long time.
If you're making your judgment on how Monty Williams will do, right, the binary that you're working from here is, are we getting like the next Larry Brown, right, or are we getting the next Flip Saunders? Flip Saunders is a stylish but massively underachieving coach who wasted the primes of several great players, or Larry Brown, who is an excellent coach who grinds the hell out of people until they're sick of him and do not want to play for him anymore. If Monty Williams leans slightly more on the Larry Brown side, that's great. And to your point, to your AI hypothetical, right? You're right. If you gave peak Steph, peak Draymond, and peak Klay to a lot of different coaches, I'm sure Paul Silas would have found a way to run that team into the ground. I'm sure Doc Rivers would have found a way for that team to be up 3-0 on multiple people and still lose. I'm sure that Flip Saunders would have found a way to absolutely fail with that team. But I do think that most nominally competent coaches could have gotten to the finals multiple times with that team because it's about talent. So if Monty gets the talent behind him, we'll really see how great a coach he is. The coach who can prove that he can win with Hall of Fame talent and without it is Eric Spoelstra, which is why he's the best coach in the league right now.
I'm going to tell you your rhetorical style. It's like the Pistons owner said, and we put that quote up there, why don't we go back to Monty? Jason Johnson's like, you know what? Why don't we go back to Doc and kick his ass one more time? We did it. We did it at 310. Let's do it at 314 again. 314, 315. Let's just go back. Hey, what if we go back and kick Doc Rivers' ass? I got to make sure he's down. Yeah, okay, he's down. You know what? I thought I saw him moving. He had a little too much energy. I want to come back and get him again. But I want to go back.
I also had to throw in Flip Saunders and Paul Silas.
Yeah.
I had to put them all in there.
And, rest in peace, too. I mean, come on. Both of them, the last two. Oh, going at them. Anyway,
I'm just saying, the resumes are there.
I want to go back. Yeah. Hey, listen, I'm not talking about the guy. I'm talking about the resume. Let's go back to Boston, where Doc Rivers used to coach. And I thought, hey, when I saw the Celtics lose to the Heat, and I saw the way Joe Mazzulla kind of acted like he's 34, and he kind of acted like he was 34 or even 24 at times with the way he carried himself. I thought, yeah, maybe they'll bring Doc back to Boston, where he won his last and only championship. But Brad Stevens today cut that out, cut out all the mystery. We know who the next head coach of the Boston Celtics is going to be. Let's listen to Brad Stevens, their president of basketball operations.
Brad, is Joe Mazzulla the best head coach for this team going forward? And if so, why?
Yeah, I think he is. And I thought he, again, did a really good job with this group. Everybody's going to overreact to the best players and coaches after every game. That's always the way it is. We know that going in, so we have to, be able to judge things on the whole. And he's a terrific leader. He'll only get better at anything that, he can learn from this year because he's constantly trying to learn. And he's accountable. Those leadership qualities are hard to find. I know they're easy to talk about, but when you can show all those through the expectations and the microscope that he was under, that's hard to do.
All right, so look, the Godfather just blessed him. He good. Okay, Joe Mazzulla's good now. Like, all right, what y'all gonna say now? I don't care what y'all say. Y'all can call me second row Joe if you want. But Brad Stevens just said I got the job. And Jason, you said the Celtics don't need to break up. What do you mean by that?
Well, look, they don't need to break up Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, right? Because, again, you did two marshmallows together, it still don't make you a s'more, right? Like, neither of those. If you separate them, it's not like one of them is going to become a better player. I have said the problem that the Pistons have, the problem that the Celtics have. And I love that Brad Stevens just came out and basically endorsed an incredibly mediocre coach that they should probably fire. I love that he came out and basically said at 34 years old, he's learning on the job, and we're going to give him 3 or 4 more years to screw up this team and not accomplish anything. That is the kind of leadership that put Brad Stevens out of coaching and into the front office as he's in now, because he couldn't lead a team either. Look, at the end of the day, Jason Tatum has no heart. I have said this all along. He has no heart. He doesn't have dog. He doesn't have soul. He doesn't have any of the things you got to have in order to be a team leader. Jaylen Brown is a quality player. He is a quality number 2. He cannot step up. He's the kind of guy that actually makes, like, Anthony Davis look tough at the end of the day. And when you have two of those people together, you can't accomplish that much. The Celtics are going to go as far as they can. I think of Antoine Walker and Paul Pierce. Those guys had heart. They ain't got no heart today.
Jason Tatum, have you seen his record in Game 7s? Okay, laid an egg in Game 7, they did on Sunday. So they lost that Game 7. They lost the Game 7 to LeBron when Jason Tatum, I think, was a rookie. Mm-hmm. Rookie year. Mm-hmm. Lost the Game 7 at the Garden and has won all the other ones. So I think he's 5-2 or 6-2. Fact check me, somebody out there. Somebody who just does that. Just fact checks people. Fact check me. I'm good, though. He's only lost 2 Game 7s. The guy went on the road last year in Milwaukee, the season on the line, knocks out Giannis on the road, extends the season on the road, then comes home, knocks out Giannis in Game 7. This year, Game 6, extends the season, scores 50-plus in Game 7. He does have, why are we saying Jason Tatum doesn't have heart? Because he hadn't won a championship at 25 years old? Is that why? If you say that, hey,
there's a difference
neither did
between
LeBron,
talent and heart.
Neither did Jordan at 25.
There's a difference between talent and heart. You know that movie, The Departed? It's actually, yes, it's
terrible
a movie about Boston, but it's also a description of what Jimmy Butler did to him. Just Boston. Departed, just took his heart, just departed his heart out of his soul from the whole team because there wasn't much there to begin with. Jason Tatum has the talent. Okay. Has the talent to have done so much better than he has. And at this point, you should probably be pretty clear about the fact that he ain't going to be that guy. There's very few players.
He's 25,
how
Jason.
Many players has the light turned on? But it's not about age. It's how many times you've played and been in that situation.
I want to see you at 25. I want to see a 25-year-old Jason Johnson. I want to see. Nobody thought this guy's going to be a PhD. No, they didn't. Not at 25, they didn't.
I think there were some reasonably good guesses as to how I would blow up at 25 years old. I was in school. Look, my first time on national television, I was 24 years old on the O'Reilly Factor. There was a guess. There was an estimate as to where this kid might show up. But I'm saying if we're looking at Jason Tatum as the equivalent.
O'Reilly Factor at 24, he was trying to destroy you. He was trying to take away your ambition, trying to take away your verve, your drive, all that stuff. He didn't want you to be in school. As a matter of fact, if you're on O'Reilly Factor at 24, I'm going to guess, let me just throw it out there. I'm going to assume, he assumed that you weren't in school, didn't he? He probably assumed that you weren't. doing anything. I don't know. Anyway, don't be dismissing anybody in their
had me on
mid-20s.
because I was in school. I survived. I'm just saying, Jason Tatum, this is his career at this particular point. And he has shown that he is not ready for the moment. I told you, he is Chris Webber, okay? He's not Antoine Walker or Paul Pierce. He is Chris Webber, all the talent in the world, but not the heart. He's David Robinson, who needed an Avery Johnson to get things done. He's not the man. And if you take Jaylen Brown, it's not going to magically turn him into a better player. It's not going to magically turn him into a leader. Just like Joe Mazzulla, whatever, their coach doesn't have it either. And at 34 years old, you should be able to keep your team mentally collected enough to take out the Atlanta Hawks, which they could barely do. You should be able to do something better. I mean, I'm sorry, out-coaching Doc Rivers, like I said, that's not an amazing accomplishment. That's like beating my 7-year-old nephew in Connect 4. That's not too complicated. And then you get absolutely trashed at home in a Game 7 on your own floor when everybody knows you have the more talented team. None of these people are great. But I think the Celtics just need to accept they're not a championship squad.
Okay. That's enough. That's enough out of you. I'm going to say to everybody, do at me. Please at me. Let me know those who knew Jason Johnson in his 20s. I want some information. We're building a dossier. We're going to bring it to the air. We're going to get a lot of information on you, okay? Because I think you're being unfair. You're being harsh. But we'll continue this. I can't wait to get that information. I can't wait.
Forget the A-seed stuff. I mean, they beat Milwaukee 4-1. Team that had the most wins in the NBA this year. They beat Boston 4-3, and they're up 3-0. Team with, I think, the second most wins in the NBA this year. So you get to the NBA Finals, it's not about seeding anymore. And for those that are thinking that this is going to be an easy series, I don't even know what to say to you people. I mean, like, this is going to be the biggest challenge of our lives. It's the NBA Finals. You know, this is, you're trying to win the first NBA championship in franchise history. And it's going to be the hardest thing that we've ever done, which is the way it should be.
Issues that we hear about for teams coming in here, how much of an effect can that have? And if it's more than zero, what are keys to getting through that?
We're not even getting into any of that stuff. Our guys are in great shape. They're ready to compete. If Denver wants to tip this thing off at the top of Everest, we'll do that. This thing is going to be decided between the four lines. You know, they also got to come back to Miami if we want to make it about that. We'll turn off the air conditioning. They got to play in 90-degree humidity.
Who said that we are favorites? The media? Las Vegas. And Las Vegas told us that we were underdog before. It's not correct, I think. I mean, I think we are not the favorites. I think in the finals there is no favorites. This is going to be the hardest game of our life, and we know that, and we are prepared for that. We are preparing and prepare for that. So I think there is no favorites, and definitely I think we are not favorites in this series. I think they are not either. I think it's just the finals. You know, there is no favorites in the finals. My opinion.
Oh, I love it. I love it. NBA Finals begin tonight. We got the Denver Nuggets hosting the Miami Heat. The Miami Heat are in the NBA Finals. I know what Michael Malone said. I know what Nikola Jokic said. Sam Amick, I'm still surprised that the Miami Heat are here. But now that they're here, and we got this matchup, and we're about to tip it off, not from Everest, but in Denver, what do you think? What do you think Game 1 is going to look like if you just had to preview it? What would you think?
Michael, Jason, appreciate y'all having me. I think the Heat, and you could feel it, man, and Spo's presser there. The Heat are going to do Heat things, which mean they're going to compete. They're going to make this thing competitive, and I would not be shocked if they take Game 1. And I say that knowing full well that it makes no damn X's and O's sense. You know what I mean? And that's kind of what I love about this Miami run is they have forced all of us to suspend disbelief and finally, I think, tip your cap to their culture, whatever you want to call it, you know, and this group of guys that has been doing this at something close to this level for a number of years now, injuries notwithstanding. So I think it'll be more competitive than folks think. I got Denver winning probably, in a longer series. But Miami is something special for sure.
And why? Why are they special? I mean, I'm just wondering, like, what? We talked about their culture and all this stuff, but this guy, for example, Caleb Martin, playing out of his mind. The guy, what do you average? Like 9 points in the regular season. Now he looks like a combination of so many great players throughout this postseason. But how do you assess what they've done so far in the postseason?
So for me, guys, like the most insight I ever learned about the Heat and how they actually operate, and let's get past that cliche of Heat culture, but actually trying to decide, like, is it cliche, is it fake, or is it substantive? When I was covering the bubble back in 2020, because I'm West Coast based, as you guys know, I'm not around the Heat a ton. The bubble was my most kind of embedded experience with the Heat, and talking to their coaches, talking to their players, and learning that, it seems a little counterintuitive in a league that is competitive across all 30 teams. I do actually now have the opinion that the Heat they have a way of training their guys to be even more competitive than almost every squad out there. And Spo and Pat Riley set the tone. But then you add in a Jimmy Butler who, the one thing I think is getting forgotten in these finals, because everybody assumes the Nuggets are going to win it, is that in terms of competitiveness, motivation, Jimmy Butler is still not a champion. You know what I mean? And when he came to Miami, that was the goal. If he wants to elevate his own legacy, he has to actually go pull off the seemingly improbable. And, I wouldn't be stunned if he could do it. But so Jimmy fits that mold. The thing about this season, though, guys, that I still can't wrap my head around, when they were 2-5, and I don't know if you saw any of this on social media, they're 2-5. They come through my neck of the woods near Sacramento. And I talked to Jimmy, talked to Bam, talked to Kyle Lowry. And I'll be honest, in these conversations, I'm going in as if I'm like, at a funeral, like, guys, sorry about the tough start, but how we feeling? That was the vibe. And Jimmy looks me dead in the eye. He says, we're going to win the effing championship. And then Bam doubled down, basically said the same thing. And it kind of reminded me, like, my God, like, even when these guys are down in the mud, they still believe, and that's bared out.
What do you think, Doc?
I got to ask you, Sam, and this is the thing. Despite the fact that the Heat players all have a tremendous level of confidence, which is great, right? You're competitive, you got this far, you got a tremendous amount of confidence. What is the actual X's and O's path for them to win? Because outside of the Joker hurting his knee and being out for the series, there is no mathematical way. I have done the Doctor Strange. I have looked through thousands of different universes and scenarios. There's not one where I see the Miami Heat beating the Denver Nuggets outside of Jamal Murray or Nikola Jokic actually getting hurt. What's the X and O's ways that they actually win this series?
I mean, first of all, Jason, I'm on the road away from my family. Don't make me feel like I'm out here for no reason. Like, I got to have some hope that this is going to be competitive. So maybe I'm just trying to speak it into existence, because I would prefer to cover an actual series. But I understand your point. It's a valid one. The numbers tell you that doubling Jokic, tripling Jokic, throwing bodies at him in the way that Spoelstra talked about pregame, it's the best of a bunch of bad options. So one-on-one coverage doesn't work. Zone, this is where the Heat are in trouble in this series, is that the Nuggets are just tailor-made to pick apart zones, and that's one of the Heat's strengths. I don't think it's going to help them in this series. You think back to like elementary school pickup basketball. If you have a big fella in the middle who can actually pass the ball, that's how you break a zone. These guys have the best passing big man in the history of basketball that's going to go in the middle. So, I don't know. And within that, and I wrote about this today, you look at a guy like Bam Adebayo, who, like all the Heat guys, has had a chip on his shoulder since he was born. And he's been upset the last couple of years about the narrative that he's not the best defensive player in the league. He thought he should have gotten that award before. If you need to find another level of motivation, Bam has not had a good track record against Jokic. Can he find another level, even though he's given up that size, height-wise, given up that size, weight-wise? So, I mean, I didn't give you a counter. I don't know exactly how they get it done. But I do think with Spoelstra, like, the dude has become a coaching wizard, and I'm excited to see what he tries.
You know, it's just so interesting, Sam. I got to tell you, it's family here. We can all just be honest. It's interesting that Jason Johnson, Dr. Jason Johnson, let me be formal here, would say that he sees no scenario in which the Miami Heat can beat the Denver Nuggets when it's the same guy, and Sam, I need you to educate him here. It's the same guy who probably took about 22 shots at Jokic, so much so he didn't even pronounce his name right. Was calling him Jokic. Okay, he took so many shots at him. The last time we talked, he's boring. He's a stat monster. All this stuff. Okay, and now, Doc Johnson. Now you think that he's unbeaten. He's about to have to call him a champion. What? Can you tell Dr. Johnson what he's been missing with Nikola Jokic this entire time?
Dr. Johnson is not alone. There's a lot of crow eating happening these days when it comes to Jokic. At our place at The Athletic, my friend and colleague Tony Jones is a Jazz beat writer who was on the Nuggets beat for this playoff run, right? Well, before Tony took this job on, he was constantly battling with Nuggets fans on social media, killing Jokic. And Tony today, shameless plug for our place, wrote a pretty entertaining column where he said, all right, y'all, I was wrong. I got Jokic wrong. So he had to write a whole column admitting as much. I think the thing is this, I've respected his talent from the beginning. I would be lying to you if I didn't say that I was among the many who still had questions about his ability to do it when it mattered most. And last year, the way that he got kind of schemed against by the Warriors when they lost in the first round, I think elevated concerns about his game and whether or not he was this guy. But he's shutting everybody up right now. And the one thing that we don't talk about enough, because his offense is just incredible, he is a machine who can do everything on that end, is that, first of all, he's gotten his body to a place where it's never been better. And his defense, he's not Giannis, he's not Embiid, he's never going to be in the discussion for all defensive team, but he's actually pretty legitimate. Like their defense, they scheme to, heighten his strengths, hide his weaknesses. And so they deserve some credit for that coaching staff wise, but he's a balanced player who is impossible to stop right now. And so we'll see what he can do.
Doc, you want to apologize to Denver now or later?
Sam. Sam, I want your thoughts on this real quick. I have described, because I've been very clear about what I feel about the Joker. He is the most boring, impressive player in the NBA since Tim Duncan. And I mean that sincerely. I find him, I like this sort of air dancer thing that he does in the middle of the court. I don't find it at all entertaining to watch. But I didn't like watching Tim Duncan either. But it doesn't mean he's not a great player. Is that a fair description? He's the most boring, great player we've seen in almost a decade.
I mean, I understand the sentiment. To me, his passing, if you lock in on his vision, you lock in on the way he moves that ball, he will make the highlight reel with his passing. And with his scoring, obviously never going to give you a highlight reel dunk. Some of his threes that scrape the top of the Arena Bowl are entertaining because they're just absurd. But yes, the entertainment factor is not like a lot of the stars in today's game. I've described him in trying to talk about his game as a dancing bear. You know what I mean? Like he's got this ballet component to his footwork, but it is very nuanced. You have to lock in on what he does to try to appreciate it. It's not quite the same as seeing Giannis, cover the entire floor in 4 strides and soar 2 feet above the rim to dunk the ball. It's not. But I think, he is worth appreciating for sure.
I want to hit you with some coaching quick hitters before we let you go. And the first one is, we were talking about it before you came on, Monty Williams.
Yeah.
Signing that huge contract with Detroit. I understand why Monty did it. Lots of reasons for him to do it. I understand why Detroit did it. Yeah. But, just standing outside of that, if you're not Monty Williams, you're not the Pistons, you're just, we're basketball observers and we look at this. How do you interpret it? How does it make sense to you, if it does make sense to you?
Well, I mean, you've got an owner in Tom Gores who has not made much noise since he bought the team so many years ago. And so I think his ambition is at a high level. You see this with a lot of owners, like there is a shelf life on, or an impatience of irrelevancy. And Tom has mostly been irrelevant when it comes to his team. And I think trying to rectify that with your checkbook, that checks out, no pun intended. More nuanced than that is, Troy Weaver, the head of their front office, has been the kind of guy who is leaning hard into, and I know, again, culture is an overused word, but he wants holistically, spiritually, the types of leaders within his group where they can try to build something out with a longer shelf life. And Monty is that, his character, his leadership abilities. It's funny because it comes on the heels of a playoff series loss where you could certainly nitpick some of the X's and O's stuff that Monty was responsible for. And there, does not have the reputation of a modern day Eric Spoelstra by any means. But when it comes to elevating kind of the collective consciousness of his players, getting guys to be selfless, there was one outlier that I will admit has always been on my mind a bit because it was so surprising is, the whole Jay Crowder controversy that they had in Phoenix when Jay was pretty upset with the way that Monty handled his situation. For me, having covered Monty in New Orleans and beyond from there, that was kind of the only time that I ran into a player that was looking at him sideways. But for the most part, guys will run through a wall for him. And with young players, that's going to go a long way.
Were you surprised by Boston bringing back Joe Mazzulla?
Guys, I'm losing the audio real quick. You still got me?
Yeah, we can hear you. I'll repeat it again. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
If you can't hear me.
That's
all right. Well, we're audio's out. Well, if you can't hear us, Sam, we appreciate it. I was going to ask you about Joe Mazzulla. You can't hear that. That's okay. We'll see you. Enjoy your time.
All right, guys.
Watching
Apologies.
this great series. No problem. Thanks. Good work as usual. Doc Johnson, I know you love movies. I love movies too. I could talk about movies with you all day. You probably got hot takes on, I know you got hot takes on movies because you happen to mention Doctor Strange when you were talking with Sam Amick, and you always say that movie's horrible, which it's not. But we'll talk about that another day. But The Little Mermaid and why there's no black prince. You see that headline there. Why are there no black princes? But I think it's a larger conversation. Why no black prince? And why some people have a problem with black mermaids. I mean, we're talking about mermaids. We're talking about Disney. And you will have pushback from people who say, I don't know about that. And this is a through line, Doc, with some of the movies that people, movies and franchises that people consider sacred. Same thing happened in Star Wars, when there were black characters in Star Wars. The same thing happened James Bond, when there were stories out there that maybe Idris will be the next James Bond. The people who say race doesn't matter seem to be very protective when there's a little bit of color on their screen and they don't expect it there, or they don't think it should be there. What are your thoughts?
Well, first, all hail, all praise Miss Bailey. She did a great job. People seem to love the movie. It's great. There are all these stories about people bringing their children, their boys and girls. That's great. Representation is great, right? But I tend to like real representation. Representation that doesn't feature black people in isolated spaces where they have no black friends, no black family, no black relatives, and no black love interests. Diversity.
They were hatched.
Is not diversity if it's simply taking the person and plopping a chocolate chip in a giant vat of milk and saying that's diversity. You can't even taste the flavor because it gets distilled. And that's what we have with these kinds of movies. We see this all the time. Someone thinks they're being great and progressive and everything else like that, and they say, hey, let's put in a black person. But they don't include an actual life around that person. Let me tell you, when I first heard they were casting Halle Bailey as Ariel, I was like, cool. And it was about 3 or 4 years ago, I remember hearing about the casting, and I was like, what would be really great? How about you update The Little Mermaid with like a Caribbean theme? Okay, for Sebastian, let's get like Sean Paul. Let's get some reggae beats, right? Let's have her dad be Idris. Like, let's make it a career. Have her prince be Corbin Blue. Corbin Blue's from the Disney family. He used to do all those High School Musical movies. You could have had this great Caribbean-themed movie that still has the energy of The Little Mermaid, right? But at the same time, respects the fact that you can't just stuff black people into environments and say, here, look what I did for you. And that's the frustration that I tend to have with movies like The Little Mermaid. Not saying people shouldn't see it. Glad that it made a lot of money, did better than Aladdin, did better than Dumbo, which is kind of a flop. But at the end of the day, token diversity isn't progress.
Yeah, and I was trying to think of the name. It was a Finn character. It was a Finn character. What was it? The Force Awakens? Where Finn was in there,
yes,
and got a
the
lot
third
of,
sister,
yeah, and got a lot of pushback on that one. But let me ask you, okay, why doesn't it happen? I think we all have our own answers, but give me your answer of your study of pop culture, your wealth of knowledge on these topics. Why isn't there more diversity in these movies?
Well, because the people who run these studios are 99% white. They are often hostile to or oblivious to the existence of non-white people, and they project their own biases and bigotries onto the consumer. And they assume that if you have stories, certainly romantic stories, that center non-white people, you at least got to have a straight white man in there. Right? That's why we don't get stories about black and brown people. That's why we don't get couples that are two black people that are centered. That's why it takes forever. They now finally going to have a black prince in the new Disney show, like Second Generation Princes or something, a Second Generation Descendants or something else like that. That's why it happens. Because the people who run these networks and these studios don't think that black people matter and don't really care. And here's the thing. Not only is that patently untrue, right? We have tons of examples of majority black films doing well, selling abroad, black leads, Bridgerton, being able to do well, but it just comes down to sort of basic bigotry. And I'll add this when I was talking about the reggae version of Little Mermaid. I don't even care if it's a reggae version of Little Mermaid. It's also about representation of functional black relationships. And I use an example because another movie I'm going to see this weekend, right? Enter the Spider-Verse, or, with Miles Morales. I love Miles Morales. And there are some people who say, well, here's another example. You got the little black boy, but he always has to have a crush on a blonde girl. Here's the thing about Miles, though. Miles is ensconced in his black and brown and Puerto Rican culture. You see his mother and his father as a loving couple. His uncle was in the first movie. Totally different situation.
Yeah, totally. A great example. And I'm glad you brought up Shonda Rhimes and Bridgerton. And I think what it will take, and look, we know, and I love your answer on studios. On studios just kind of being these gatekeepers and saying, okay, we'll give you a little bit. We'll give you some breadcrumbs, but we're not going to open this whole thing up because people, the public, is not ready for it. And what they're really saying is, I'm not ready for it. I don't want to do it. One of the beautiful things about Shonda Rhimes, I've always loved this about her. She is unapologetic. She's got imagination. If she wants something to happen, damn it, that thing's going to happen. I don't care if you believe me or not. I don't care if it's historically, if you think it's historically inaccurate that there's a black queen and there's a black prince and all these black folks with power around this this kingdom or this city that we don't really know about. I'm going to do it. Why? Because I'm a storyteller. And I'm a damn good storyteller, and she really is. I'm a damn good storyteller, and I'm going to tell you, I'm going to give you my vision. Now, you disagree with some of the things that I say because you're kind of wincing when I talk about Shonda Rhimes. You're wincing a little bit.
Yes.
Wait,
I mean, excruciating pain.
You're not feeling her?
I could start with talking. I could start with the colorism within most of Shonda Rhimes, especially this sort of new Bridgerton series, that any black person who can't pass a brown pag test is almost never the love interest, or that darker skinned black people always tend to be problematic or pushed to the side, or the fact that the vast majority of her stories feature problematic, dead, abused, or missing black men, and it's always white men who come in and save. I could talk about all of those things, going all the way back to Scandal, which again had to feature a Republican white man having an affair with his wife with a black woman when we had the first black president of the United States. I could go there, but I will just say that it's an example of the fact that even when you have black people in control as the final decision makers and gatekeepers, we still don't always get the kind of representation that truly shows the diversity of the Black experience. And I'm not saying every Black director has to do that, but I am saying that to pick and choose what aspects of Blackness you want to show, but still sort of have this underlying attitude that the white audience has to be pandered to in a way that's not necessary. I know white people will watch anything, just like Black people will watch anything if it's entertaining, but the obsession with sort of white approval and fear of white disapproval is one of the reasons why we get some of the films that we get.
See, now I'm cringing. Okay, now I'm cringing. I'm glad we can have this conversation. You know, I'm glad we can do this. I'm cringing when you say that. The richness and the depth and breadth of the Black experience almost makes that term a misnomer. The Black experience. It probably should be the Black experiences, because there are just so many. Like, nobody is going to be able to, Doc. Nobody. I don't care who it is. Whoever you think the most brilliant writer is, the most brilliant 10 writers in entertainment. Nobody is ever going to be able to produce something that captures all of us and all of our. They're just not going to be able to capture that. You tell me somebody who has, like, even some of the movies that we elevate and some of the movies that we hold near and dear, there are criticisms of those movies, whether it's movies or books or short or limited series. I'm sure some people had some problems with Alex Haley back in the day, with Roots, the #1 miniseries in TV history in the late 1970s. Oh, why are you showing that? Why aren't you focus more on the oppressors and not necessarily the slaves? Or why, Spike Lee has gotten criticism for being too male-centric in his films. Like, there are just so many. For Black storytellers, there's always going to be criticism. But the reason I'm shouting out Shonda Rhimes and I'm shouting out Spike Lee and others is that they have jumped in and given you their vision of what they like to see. It's not perfect, but it's better than some of the stuff we see when we are just given one or two minor roles.
If somebody gives me a pile of dog poop and puts sugar on the top and a little bit of cheese and tells me it's chili, it's not chili. And I'm sorry, but I don't think a lot of these things are good. I think that they are screened through. It's the same thing with, look, Kenya Barris gave us a great series called Blackish and gave us a great series called Grownish. But a lot of his other racial politics and other things that he's done have been extremely problematic, from Black AF to you people. I mean, look, just because you have Black people in charge and able to create this kind of imagery doesn't always mean that, one, it shows a diversity of the Black experience, or two, that it's not ultimately poisonous. I could say the same thing about Tyler Perry. Tyler Perry's made some great stuff. Tyler Perry's made some terrible stuff. So I don't put the responsibility on one particular creator. But what I do say is, when we look at somebody's resume of work, we can talk about the fact that Tyler Perry has had some colorism issues in his work, but he does tend to show Black love. We can talk about Shonda Rhimes and say, hey, she has put Black women in lots of diverse situations, but can't seem to find a lot of opportunities for Black on Black love. That's the kind of thing that I'm talking about. It's not that they don't make an experience, it's that they seem to only want to show certain kinds of experiences that are comfortable for them and for an audience that don't always look or sound like us.
Maybe it's comfortable for them. Maybe it's comfortable for them along with the business aspect of it too. They're looking at it and say, okay, it's back to their own interpretation of what will sell, what will be most compelling. I don't know. But I'm glad we had a conversation. Like, we got a lot more on this. I didn't think we'd get as much out of this as we did. We got a lot more coming on this. Next time you come on, we're going to get into it. Oh, yeah. We're going to get into this. All right, Doc. Mike Pence, who sat there silently for 4 years with Donald Trump, is now running for president. Will he take a swing at the bully? Will he connect? Because he knows a lot more about Trump than anybody else. What do you think Pence is going to do?
The only thing that Mike Pence would swing from in the mind of most Republican voters is a noose, because that's what the MAGA crowd was trying to do to him 2 years ago. It is insane to me. It is beyond Stockholm Syndrome for this man to run for the Republican nomination when a significant chunk of the MAGA base is okay with the fact that people were trying to hang him on January 6th. This is not just a matter of, I want to explain to people my message. This is not a matter of, I want to communicate or I want to go after Trump. Frankly, Michael, I think the only reason he's running is because maybe if he becomes a nominee, he can get Secret Service protection again. Because the man ain't safe. It ain't safe outside for Mike Pence. And it hasn't been for years. I think it's a shame that he's running. I think that he is just as complicit in the ongoing coup that we see from the Republicans in this country. And I'm not surprised that he's running, but he's going to be about as effective as Tim Scott, which is not at all.
And it's amazing, like these guys who will run against Trump, and already DeSantis, he's kind of tiptoeing around Trump. No, you might as well not run. If you're gonna run against him, you better put his name in your mouth, and you better bring it. You better bring some haymakers if you're gonna run against the man. But being this whole polite thing is not gonna work. Let's talk about Succession. You got it in your feed, and you want to talk about Succession and series finales. I think you're gonna spoil it for people, but go ahead and say what you got to say. I know you're gonna spoil it. I know you will.
Look, I'm going to say this. Just like I say Mike Pence has Stockholm Syndrome, a lot of people seem to be beholden to the Swiss. So that's all I'm going to tell you about what happens in Succession, okay? People are beholden to the Swiss in ways that they should not be. Look, I thought it was an excellent finale. You had Ted Lasso, Barry, and Succession all ending around the same time, which got me thinking about, okay, a lot of great series finales are coming. I wouldn't put Succession up there with, say, like the end of The Wire or the end of The Shield or the end of, some other great shows. Like, The Wire and The Shield in particular, Homicide: Life on the Street are some of the greatest finales ever. It's not up there. It's closer to like 6 Feet Under and some of those other shows. It didn't peter out at the end, but it didn't satisfy me in the way it should have.
Didn't satisfy you in the end. But overall, you're a big fan of the show?
It was great. It was terrible rich people doing terrible things the whole time.
All right. Listen, Doc Johnson, good to see you. I don't know if we're going to see you later tonight, but we are having a party. Bring your own beverage. Bring your own food. BFA watch party, Game 1, NBA Finals. Michael will be there. I will be there. Natalie will be there. Perhaps Doc Johnson and others will come through. We're going to watch the Nuggets and the Miami Heat. We're just going to sit there and chill. We're just going to talk. It's like a family conversation. So we'll be watching the game at times closely. At other times, we'll just be making fun of each other. Continuing our Shonda Rhimes conversations. Continuing our Hollywood conversations. You take some more shots at people, I'm sure. But at a party and alcohol, I don't know. I don't know how it's going to go down if you start taking shots at people. Hey, thank you for watching Brother from Another. If you haven't hit that subscribe button, go ahead and do that now. Don't forget, you can catch us 3 to 4 weekdays on PeacockTV.com and on Sirius XM Channel 85.